All right. Thanks so much for joining us for another episode of Texas on My Mind. I have the amazing honor and privilege today to actually be sitting across and getting the chance to interview my grandfather, Jack L. Morris Sr. Jack is a father. He is my mother's father. He is a grandfather of 4 grandchildren and a great-grandfather of 2 great-grandchildren, and resides in Dallas, Texas, and is a lifelong Texas A&M Aggie. So I'm very, very, very excited to get the chance to interview him and for us to talk a little bit more about your life and everything that you've given to this great state of Texas and to us as a family. So thanks so much for joining me, Grandad.
Okay, you ready for me?
I'm ready for you. Yes,
Okay.
sir. All right. So tell me. So we were just talking a little bit about where you were born in Texas.
I was born in Commerce, Texas, but I don't remember much because my dad was the quarterback for East Texas Commerce, which is now A&M.
Okay.
And Perry Fight, who ended up, was one of his linemen and said if it was in the 20s that he would have probably made Little All-American anyway. They didn't have that kind of thing in those days.
What years was he there?
Excuse me?
At East Commerce University. It was a college or university?
East Texas
Commerce.
University at Commerce, Texas. He was the quarterback of their team.
This was your daddy.
And in those days, I think it could have been only a 2-year college. Mm-hmm. And he went on from there to coach, and I don't think he was nearly as good a coach as he was a player because we moved a lot.
I got you.
And like I say, I was born in Commerce, but he was still playing.
Right. What year were you born in?
1931, July the 18th.
July 18th, 1931.
31.
Which is is that the start or right before the Great Depression started, or right in the middle of the Great Depression?
I don't remember. I think the Great Depression actually ended during the 30s.
Okay.
And I don't remember anything about it. I do remember we moved a lot in those days. Mm-hmm. And finally, when I became I guess I was in the 7th grade, he decided that he wasn't as good a coach as he was a player, and he established a cleaning and pressing shop in Talco, Texas, which isn't even around anymore. It was an oil field at the time, and evidently they pumped all the oil out of there.
Gotcha.
But when I got to the 7th grade, because we moved just about every year, he decided that he better go into business where I could stay and be involved in sports. Mm-hmm. So he set up a cleaning and pressing shop in Talco, Texas.
Gotcha.
And it later, it had a great school because it was a big oil town, and Humble at the time, which I think is now Enco, mm-hmm. Was the big deal, and we settled in Talco, and I started in the 7th grade. Of course, I didn't know any of these things then.
Sure.
And as it turned out, I was president of the 7th, 8th, and junior and senior classes. I don't know why it was a voted thing.
Very popular in school, it sounds like.
We had a whole lot of fun, and the school was excellent because Humble Oil had so much money and they had to pay taxes. And
right.
the school isn't even there anymore. But we moved there. I was in the 7th grade, and by the time I got to be a junior, as I recall, was in a lot of sports.
Okay.
And
What
do
type
you
of
want to
sports?
hear anything about that?
Yeah. Well, first, so what part of Texas is Talco located in?
Talco, I guess you'd say northeastern, if
Very
anything.
northeastern, right?
It's around Paris, Texas
Gotcha.
now.
So very northeast
It was where
Texas.
it's not there any longer.
Right.
But that's
Yeah.
the part of Texas, if you know where Paris is.
I do. Are you familiar with why? I did a little research before this interview of why Talco was called Talco. Are you aware of why?
I really don't know, and never
No problem.
did.
Yeah. So
It's, I think Umbalal actually named it, and it
I think
stood
so.
for something.
I think it was originally called something else, but it was it's spelled Talco.
That's how you spell
it. And because
it.
it's so northeast in Texas, it borders Texas, Arkansas, and Louisiana. And there was a candy company that was called Texas, Arkansas, Louisiana Candy Company.
That could easily
and
be
so
it.
it went TAL, Texas, Arkansas, Louisiana Company. And so they renamed the town Talco.
Well, and as it turned out, it was an oil field, but it was a short or depth oil field, mostly asphalt.
Right. I think it's
And,
still known, if it's, it's still around. It's a very small town, but I think it
Well,
was known
it's not
as.
still around.
Well,
They've-
okay.
I
It's-
think
it's
they've
gone away.
even done something with the school. They did try to get me to buy the school, but
They tried to get
I
you to buy
couldn't-
the elementary school,
no,
the high school.
there was a school
Mm-hmm.
that wasn't air conditioned, but it was in the form of a T.
Okay.
And at that time, there was a lot of oil, and they had a lot of money, but it soon was all pumped out, and it's not even a place anymore.
Right.
And actually, it's also close to Oklahoma.
Very close to Oklahoma,
and,
being
and
north.
a lot of people moved to Oklahoma, and I don't think, well, I know Talco's not even there. My uncle had the cleaning, had the had a store there, and he never did look after me, so.
No way.
I liked it, and my daddy quit coaching and started a cleaning and pressing shop there when I was in the 7th grade, mainly where I could participate in sports, which I did, and not knowing at the time, I know I went to the quarterfinals in tennis. I liked tennis as well as, and in those days, you had to win out to stay in competition.
Right.
And Mount Vernon was in our district.
They were the biggest in the district.
And they were the big school, and the only reason I got whatever I got was the coach of Mount Vernon. Actually, they had committees in those days, and it was divided. The state was
Really?
divided. I liked tennis, and I went to the quarterfinals in Texas. On it, they operated differently in those days.
Right.
And in the coach of Mount Vernon, who later went to both Baylor and the University of North Texas and was their coach, he did more for me for whatever reason than our coach did. And but he was a good guy and actually was responsible for whatever honors I got. And I liked tennis. I went to the quarterfinals in tennis. And in football, I lettered as a sophomore at defensive tackle.
Really?
Was the only reason. So
Defensive
by the time
tackle?
I got to be actually a junior and senior, I was quarterback. And I did pick up tennis as well as football and basketball. Everybody played whatever in those days.
Right.
But we had a pretty good team, and that school isn't even there anymore.
Right.
But
I think it was, when it was there, the asphalt capital of Texas, was it not?
As it turned out, that's, I think, Humble, which became Inco,
Right.
actually had a lot to do with that, but it was low drilling, and they just took up all the all. But the school was great.
Yeah.
And is in the form of a T. It wasn't air conditioned, except the cafeteria and gymnasium.
Okay.
But
was that by design?
I had a lot of fun there.
I bet. Was it the form of a T by design for Talco?
Yes.
Okay, gotcha.
It was in the form of a T, and I know later on I was asked to buy it, and I couldn't figure out a way of what to do with it.
I wouldn't know what to do with the school either if somebody asked, if I even had the money to buy it.
It's not even there anymore, but we had a lot of fun doing sports in those days. And actually, Mount Vernon, who Don Campbell, or
that sounds
that was a coach at
big Texas.
In my time, his older brother, who was a lot better athlete than he ever was, I tackled him with, and he had his hip pads out, and that's what paralyzed one of the muscles in my eye.
Really?
And I know my mother spent 10 years trying to figure out what was wrong, but as it turned out, that's what happened.
So
because
you tackled.
I did like sports, and especially we had football, basketball, and track.
Right.
In those days, it was yards instead of meters.
Okay.
And
in track,
I ran the 440 yard, which was one time around the oval that where the football field was. And as I said, I went to quarterfinals in the tennis, and we had a good basketball team, but our coach, who was an Indian from Oklahoma, made us shoot free throws and shoot regulars with two hands.
Okay.
Instead of the way they do now.
Instead of the normal way.
We tried to do it that way, and he wouldn't let us.
He wasn't a fan of that.
That's another story.
Sure.
And really, those days, I think we had more fun than anything.
It sounds like it. Yeah.
You know, Texas was not wet in those days.
Very dry.
That's right.
Lots of dry counties could not purchase alcohol.
Nearly all they was that way, and actually I got more of whatever I got was from the coach of that town I said.
Sure.
Where Don Campbell came from.
Gotcha.
But we enjoyed, I know I had a paper route, the Paris newspaper route.
Paris newspaper route.
And when I had a bicycle, took me about 4 hours because everything was scattered in an oil field.
Okay, gotcha.
And so I realized I had to get some kind of motorbike. In those days, they just had a little motorbike that you ran to get it started. You couldn't kick start it. So I got that, and it made a lot of difference in cut my 4 hours to 1 hour.
Yeah, I can imagine. Yep.
In fact, my son, I guess you'd say, inherited that deal, and it's long gone now. But we won a lot of things in those days, and that's like I say, that school isn't even there anymore.
Go. Yep. So you graduated from Talco High School.
Yes.
And you went to Texas A&M.
That is right. And the reason there, I started off in petroleum engineering until I went to the first chemistry lab, which we didn't have. And I said, I better change. And my roommate was over reading funny books. And so I said, I'm going to take what he's taking, not knowing it was a 5-year course.
Oh, no.
Which it turned out, everything turned out all right, though. And
right. What made you...
just about everybody that I know is gone.
Right.
And like I say, there's no more Talco. But that oil field is dried up, so there's no more oil field.
Not a big town or a town at all anymore, it sounds like.
Say that again?
It's not around anymore, it sounds like.
No, Talco isn't even... It went to Pagoda. When the students did, they made a new school in a halfway between Talco and Pagoda called Johnstown.
Okay.
And it's not there anymore. I think everything is pretty well gone.
Interesting.
Both people I knew in high school and the class of 52 at A&M. But we really had a lot of fun, and I know I went pretty far in the one-act play. We had one-act play competition then.
Sure.
And it was totally different from, I don't think they have that anymore.
Probably not, yeah. There are multiple acts, it sounds like.
And, but we enjoyed everything, and but nothing's there now.
Right. So what made you want to pursue going to Texas A&M? What made you choose that from high school?
Well, I wanted to go to what turned out to be my roommate and my best friend, which was a year ahead of me, was going to A&M, and so I wanted to go to A&M
with your
where
two
I
buddies.
knew somebody.
Yeah.
And as it turned out, like I say, it started off in petroleum, but I wasn't any good at chemistry, and so my roommate was reading funny books instead of studying. So I said, I'm going to take what he took, which was architectural construction, and not knowing it was a 5-year course.
Right.
Because I worked my way through anyway, and we enjoyed the time we had there.
Right.
But it was a lot different than it is now.
Right. So when you went to A&M, did you have a girlfriend? Because it was an all-male college.
It was an all-male college.
Right.
And I had a girlfriend in high school, but I still went to A&M because I wanted to take petroleum engineering until I went to that chemistry and felt like I better change.
Because you didn't learn chemistry.
To something that was 5 years instead of 4.
Right.
But as everything turned out okay, and
gotcha.
we enjoyed it. I know my roommate's friend was from a town called Mount Pleasant, and he had one of those old Model A's that had the back deal,
Oh, yeah.
but no brakes.
No brakes on the car.
So we wanted in a certain company, and we drove in that car with no brakes through Houston to Galveston, where they was having a party. And the way we would stop, the driver would tell Gilbert and I to jump out and stop the car. And that's what
so
we
you
did.
were the brakes.
We didn't think anything of it. And I remember when we went back, we heard this noise, and we stopped the car, and he went back a ways and put something iron in the rumble seat. And we asked him what it was, and he said, well, that's just the brake rods, and we don't need them anyway.
Oh, my goodness. So you had to jump out of the car.
Well, me and Gilbert both to stop
just
it.
to
He
put
would
your
gear
feet
it
down and stop
as
the car.
much as he could.
Oh, gosh.
And then we would stop it, and we didn't think anything of it.
That is just really funny. Yeah.
I didn't start working at A&M until my sophomore year. And in those days, all the freshmen were at Bryan Army Air Base, because so many people, including servicemen, went to A&M, they didn't have a place for us.
Right.
But as it turned out, everything turned out okay.
It sounds like it. Speaking of cars, I know you had a car in college that was called something.
I didn't have a car in college until my 5th year.
Your super senior year, your 5th year.
It was because it was the 5th year.
Right.
And architectural construction was 5 years. And I know in those days I took all my extra hours in civil engineering, and I got the only architectural construction engineering degree at A&M.
Wow.
When I graduated, which was 53. And
to this day, you are the only graduate from Texas A&M with an architectural engineering degree?
After I got that, and they raised so much hell about it, they started an architectural engineering degree, which was 5 years.
Okay.
And I don't think they even have that. Well, A&M's totally different now.
Right.
And I think it's the biggest school in Texas.
It is now, yeah.
One of the biggest in the nation, but they did start up an architectural engineering degree, but they made it 5 years. And later on, one of the guys told me, well, hey, they just wanted the money.
They just wanted the money, okay.
that you had to have to get into A&M.
I got you.
In those days.
So it was a thing. It became a thing. Architectural engineering became a thing.
It became an actual degree.
Because much to your, you going to school and getting architectural construction and civil engineering.
Well, I don't
combined.
know why they did it.
Okay,
but,
gotcha.
As it turned out, they did, and I spent like 30 years trying to explain to them they should change from a 5-year course to a 4-year course, which they finally did.
Okay.
And one of the guys, Monty Montgomery, who's dead now, he said, well, the reason it was 5 years is because it had 1 year extra money.
Yeah, there you go. They wanted
to get that particular degree.
They had to get that extra year.
You needed a lot of civil engineering, which the architectural department started doing.
Right. Okay.
And then, but when I was there, the the only architectural school was the 4th floor of the academic building.
Wow.
And I assume they still have it, but they've got a lot. At the time I went, the only thing west of the railroad was the veterinary medicine.
Okay.
And now the big business schools there and everything, but things change.
Yep, absolutely. So when did you meet my grandma, my grand-grandma?
Gene, we moved to Farmersville.
Okay.
My daddy was a teacher there, and actually I got a job with the, I forget what the name of the company was, but you had spikes and you went up on poles when they were wiring them.
Okay.
And
the telephone poles.
I know my youngest brother, Perry, stole those spike shoes after I got through. And
they're probably fun to play with.
He kept them. I don't know whatever happened to them.
Ah, okay. So your daddy was a teacher in Farmersville.
He was a teacher.
Okay.
And in those days, teachers didn't make much money. It's the only reason I had to work my way through A&M.
Yeah.
But I can't remember when he didn't have 2 jobs. In those days, his second job started, it was like from 4 to 8 or so, because there were a lot of servicemen that the government paid for it.
Gotcha.
And he would teach school or be a principal or whatever he was during the day, and then in the afternoon from 4 to 8, he taught these servicemen business degree or whatever.
So they could go after the military and work.
Yeah, and the military was money, paying for it.
Yeah, start a career, things like that.
In business if they wanted to.
Gotcha. Yeah.
Like I say, I was a good friend of Perry Fite's as long as he was alive, and the superintendent of this big school in Dallas that's no longer there. But he told me a lot of things about the olden days, and my dad was evidently an excellent football player and not a good school teacher.
Oh, I gotcha. So better player and coach, but not the best teacher.
Oh, that's true.
Okay.
And even though he did always have 2 jobs, because in those days school teachers didn't make
a
money.
lot of money. Yeah, unfortunately, they don't make they don't make a ton now. I think football coaches do, but teachers not so much.
Well, and like Perry told me, he was an excellent football player. He just wasn't a good teacher.
I gotcha. So grandmother lived in Farmersville,
and
that's how you met her?
Farmersville, and later on, one of our good friends told me she was going with a guy that was about a foot taller than me and an excellent athlete. He actually was the leading pitcher for the Farmersville Ramblers.
Okay, Farmersville Ramblers.
And a guy told me later, said, well, the reason Gene quit going with him and started going with me was because she could get out of Farmersville.
Okay, gotcha.
And he
was
stayed
stuck there, huh?
The youngest son of 5, and he had 4 sisters. And one of his sister's boys came in and borrowed some money from him and gave him a gym of some kind, and they came back and wanted the gym because I guess he's going to borrow some more money. And he said, well, I got it right here in my desk, but you got to pay me back the money before I give it to you. And they didn't like that, and they shot him right
No
there.
way.
And both of them went to prison. I don't know if they're still there or not. I hope they're not around.
Yeah, I would say
But
so.
this guy said that's the reason Jean went with you is because
Oh my goodness.
she wanted to get out of farming.
It sounds like he was, unfortunately doing business or being around some
Well,
pretty bad characters.
As you
He
know,
got
there
shot
was a
by him.
lot of things wrong with her, but everybody thought they were going to get married, but they didn't. And she was a great person. If she had just listened to Sam, who was a friend of mine, when he was president of the Democratic Party, he was going to run her where he could be the first politician to back a woman, and I bet they would have won, and we would have had our first woman president.
No way.
And but
Of the
if
nation.
you knew my wife, Jean, she set out to do certain things, and nothing would change her mind.
Right.
She just always did, I'm going to do this, and she did it. And Sam was just a politician, Rayburn.
Sam Rayburn.
I called him by the wrong name. I called him, I forget what it was, but it was a friend of ours said, Jack, Sam's right, but you're calling him the wrong name on the last.
Oh, no.
Well, as it turned out, everything turned out to be all right.
I think so. So grandmother went to University of North Texas in Denton.
That's right.
That's right.
She graduated there, and
Yep. So she went there.
She could have been anything she wanted to, but she was, I guess you'd say, stubborn.
Okay, gotcha. So she stayed in North
you
Texas.
knew her as well as I did, and
Right.
she would decide, I'm going to do this, and that's what she did.
There you go.
Sam didn't try to get her to let him be her manager. He wasn't going to be vice president, but he was head of the Democratic Party, and he offered to run her on the Democratic ticket, and I think they won that year. So we would have had the first woman president. Didn't turn out that way because
This is the president
you knew
of
Jean.
Texas,
She
the Democratic
makes
Party.
up her mind to do something. That's what happened.
I gotcha. So when you guys were dating when you guys were in college, right?
I know. Well, yes. When I was a junior
Junior in college.
in college, not like I said before, it was a 5-year
Right.
course.
So your third
we
year.
started dating there. So after I graduated my 5th year, I said, I better tie her down. So I got married 4 days after I graduated.
That seems to be a tradition that many Aggies still uphold to. So, because there's a thing.
It
that,
was different
yeah.
times.
It was different times, but even to this day, there's a lot of Aggies, A&M students that go. I feel like they go to A&M to find their spouse. They get engaged their senior year and they get married very quickly. After college.
Because I know quite a few of them, they're all gone now. Some of them became pretty good in business and
I'm sure.
did well. I really don't go down there anymore, but I understand it's really changed.
It has changed a lot. So when grandmother came to visit you, she would ride the train. Is that right?
When she would go
To College Station.
they got I think she had to go to Dallas to catch the train.
Okay.
And there would be probably 100 guys there. In those days, the train only stopped at one place, and I forget where, maybe it was Waco or someplace. But there would be a lot of guys at that train station picking up their dates.
Yeah.
And she turned out to be pretty good, although she had all kinds of things wrong with her. And I know I
she obviously
complained
did
a lot
something
to
right
the doctor
to get you.
about we had the same doctor, and he finally said, "Jack, you need to quit complaining about us. We extended her life 5 or 6 years, but you know she is 85 when she died, and that's not young."
That's a long life, a long fulfilled life.
Especially in the condition which started when we were first married at Clovis Air Force Base, and they took her tonsils out. And that doctor, who was a good friend of mine, said that was the worst set of tonsils he ever saw.
Oh no!
And she was in the hospital a lot, and I've never been in the hospital, so I don't know. But
sure,
she could have done anything she wanted to.
I mean, she had a heart of gold.
What.
She had a heart of gold, and she spoiled us grandchildren. That's for sure. And
she spoiled everybody.
She spoiled everybody. She was an incredibly beautiful, amazing woman.
I wish he had argued with her a little, but Sam didn't. When he was head of the Democratic Party, he just went on to the next item.
Right.
So we kept on talking.
So you were married at Clovis Air Force Base?
No, I was married in Farmersville.
In Farmersville.
At the First Baptist Church.
Okay.
But started going with her, I guess, when I was a junior at A&M.
Right. And she'd come and visit you.
Figured
the train.
I better marry quick as I could for somebody else.
Somebody else swooped in there.
And so we got married right after I graduated.
And you were in the Corps Cadets, because everybody that attended A&M had to be in the Corps at that time.
They offered me to head up all the Air Force units, but I didn't want to do that. I wanted to be in a position where I could talk to the people. And so I was commander of L Squadron.
L Squadron.
And it started off at A, so that gives you some idea how many there were. I got the great offer to head up all the Air Force units, but I wanted to have my own deal where I could talk to the people.
Have the relationships.
And years later, a guy in the administration said, I might as well tell you, you were the only outfit at A&M during the time that nobody left A&M and nobody failed a course. And they wanted to know what system I set up. And I told them, which basically was the upperclassmen that had the same major would help the young guy. Well, this guy told me nobody in L Squadron flunked a course.
That's incredible.
Not a single one. Well, all I did was have the upperclassmen help them.
Right.
Before
mentor
quizzes
them. Yeah.
And we started the quiz file that I understand everybody sort of copied it.
Wow. That's
but
incredible.
I enjoyed the whole 5 years I was there, and a lot of things I never told anybody that happened that I got, and because I guess I just didn't want to.
Sure. Yeah.
And there was so much. We were busy extending Gene's life as long as we could.
Sure.
But
so when you went to the Air Force after school, right? You went and
After
served in
I
Clovis
went as
Air
a
Force.
first lieutenant instead of a second lieutenant,
Okay,
and because I had a 5-year course,
sure.
and
What was your role at the Air Force?
excuse me,
What was your role as a first lieutenant? What were you in charge of?
I was in charge of all construction, and a guy told me later they probably wouldn't do that again because you laid out all the streets and redid Clovis Air Force Base and caused a lot of problems.
Oh, really? because you changed
of
everything.
And but I
I'm
didn't
sure you
know any different.
I'm sure you made it better, though. I'm sure
Well,
it was a better
I
spot.
think so because, people in those days sort of went to the service when they couldn't do anything else.
Right.
And I know they tried to get me to stay in, and I remember the last time that the commander who was trying to get me to stay in, he asked me, well, how would you go? And I said, well, I'm not a flyer, so I can't go very high, but I would go to be chief of staff. And he immediately stood up and said, Lieutenant Morris, this meeting's over. And they were all pilots, and he flew into a mountain for some reason. I tried to change the airplanes. The oxygen bottle was under the seat of an 86H. And after that time, they did away with them.
Right.
And made a better airplane, I thought. But that's I looked at it as just that's what I was supposed to do.
That's right. Yeah, I guess so. You did your job, right? So I know my mom was born on the Air Force Base, but you moved. Did you move to Dallas after?
Yes.
After the military, and you were in construction in the military. Obviously,
Right.
you have a degree. Where did you go? Who did you go to work for after you left?
I went
the
to
Air
work
Force?
for the J.W. Bateson company.
J.W. Bateson.
And
Based
which was
in Dallas?
the biggest in Dallas,
Okay.
which was the biggest contract. And I'd always worked for a fella Aggie firm, Miller Norton. And he said, well, when you graduate, we're not going to hire you. You go to work for Bateson.
Okay.
And I did, and it turned out real good. I ended up, they made a guy that was a sophomore in my outfit at A&M as president, and I thought it should have been me, so I started my own company.
Okay.
And as things usually turn out, it turned out pretty good.
It sounds like it. When you were with Bateson, it sounds like we were talking about this yesterday. You were in charge of building a lot of federal
I ended up being in charge
projects.
of that, and I thought I'd be president, and I left when they didn't make me president.
Sure.
It
you
was
said,
Syntex in Dallas bought Bateson
Gotcha.
when he died.
Understood.
So
Yeah. But
as it turned out, that was good for me.
it turned out pretty good. Everything worked
In
out.
fact, I still know the Joe Walker that was president of Bateson at the time, and he's a very good friend of mine. And we used to go to A&M. We don't anymore. But he was one of the smartest guys I ever knew, and
That's great.
he could have.
Yeah. And even though they didn't make you president of,
Excuse me?
even though they didn't make you president of Bateson, you were in charge of a lot of incredible projects.
I was in charge of all construction.
Right.
And I thought my next step would be president, but they made Joe Walker,
Right.
who was a great guy,
Sure.
a very good friend of mine. And Bateson did a lot of good work. I mean, they were a big company.
Right.
And Joe did well with them.
Right. But you still, as the head of construction, you were in charge of building the Boston, Massachusetts City Hall building.
That's right.
I know you were in charge of building the airport in Atlanta. Is that correct?
We built the airport in Atlanta. That was before my time.
That was before your time. Okay.
Yeah.
And then some VA hospitals, quite a few VA hospitals.
We did a lot of, I bet we built 20 or 30 hospitals. And we were real good at that. And we built hospitals in federal office buildings. That's the big government thing in those days.
That's right.
But we built hospitals for everybody. And I met a lot of good people doing that.
Sounds like it.
It was a lot of fun. Now, the downside of it, as it turned out, I was away a lot more than I was at home.
Right. Yeah.
And
the nature of the business, right?
But that's just, I guess you had to be. We worked all over the country, but we only did 1 or 2 jobs here in Dallas.
That's right.
And, but we were from, as I used to say, from Seattle to Miami and San Diego to New York. So or Boston or Maine, we built one big double cantilever hangar in Maine. But
that's great.
That was a long time ago.
That's incredible. Being part of a construction company based in Dallas, Texas, built all of these incredible federal office buildings across the country, VA hospitals.
We at one time were the #1 by money construction company in America.
Wow.
And then I forget who was third. They became #1, but we enjoyed it. I had a lot of fun.
Yeah, it sounds like it.
And in Washington and Maine and Boston, they thought I was a heck of a lot better than I am.
They liked you a lot.
They thought
they took care of you
because I was in charge of all construction that I was somebody, but I wasn't.
But I'm sure you made a lot of close friends and met good people that way.
I did, and I've spent the last few years, I've stopped now, trying to look up some of those people, and they're all gone.
I hear you.
And it's no fun being the last of the Mohicans.
I hear you.
That was a big movie when I was at A&M, and the chief
Daniel Day-Lewis
was the last Indian chief, and he always said America was his country, not ours. And so the Corps of Engineers finally moved him to Canada, and I don't know what happened to him.
Okay, gotcha. All right.
But he and I became good friends. And
but after Bateson, you started your own construction company,
yes.
Clark Morris. Is that correct? Clark Morris?
Clark was Jimmy Clark out of Clark Enterprises, which turned out to be the #1 money-wise company in America. And he furnished the money, and I did all the work.
Okay, gotcha.
So, but
you took on the bulk of it.
I was really lucky to have somebody furnish the money, because it was probably 10 or 15 million just in cash in those days. And we became the #1 company money-wise.
Revenue-wise.
And for 1 year, and I think we ended up in the top 10. I don't know but Clark Morris turned out pretty good.
I think so,
final
too.
Analysis.
Absolutely. Yeah. I'm sure you got the opportunity to, build some amazing buildings with your company.
I know built at least 20 hospitals and 20 or 30 federal office. In those days, VA hospitals were big,
right?
And federal buildings by the government was big, and we were probably the biggest builder and those things than anybody.
That's fantastic.
But
Yep.
you get in a lot of trouble too.
I bet. Yeah, there's probably a lot of red tape you have to go through.
Well,
and permits and all that.
I just wanted to do things different than I guess you're supposed to,
Right.
but I did them anyway.
I gotcha. Well, after you retired from Clark Morris, when you officially retired, it sounds like you were very still involved with Texas A&M. You've created scholarships.
I was for a while,
Mm-hmm.
and then I just decided to be retired.
Yep, just enjoy
And
retired life.
so I didn't do anything, and I understand that A&M is quite different now.
It is. Mhm.
And
A little different.
I believe they're the biggest university in Texas.
They are. They have. They're the biggest university in the nation, actually, now in terms of
Oh,
number
they
of
are?
students. So, 75,000 students go
Well,
to
I
Texas
know
A&M.
they bought Commerce,
Right.
East Texas, and they had a place, I think, in Corpus Christi or so.
Yep, the
They've
Sea
got
Aggies.
7 or 8.
Galveston and Corpus. Yeah. So,
Galveston,
yeah.
right?
And it's just, I think it's 3,400 acre campus in College Station. So you just have a lot of room for people. There's always
Well,
the
they own
new construction.
They own like 6,000 acres because their big thing was agriculture.
That's right.
And you had to have places.
That makes
to-
sense. A little bit
to
more than 40
plant
acres in
cotton
Austin.
and
you know?
whatever.
Yeah.
But I don't. Do they still do that?
Oh yeah. I mean, it's agriculture. I had a lot of friends when I was there that were ag economics, agricultural.
Well, I understand
majors,
it's one of
other
the
different
best
degrees.
agriculture
Yep.
deals. And when I
Engineering.
was there, that was the only thing west, I guess, of the railroad of the street, Main Street,
Mm-hmm.
and where the railroad was.
Right.
But I understand now it's everywhere.
It is. Yeah.
They've grown all over.
It's a humongous. They have the vet school
What
is humongous.
class were you?
I was 2011, class of 2011.
2011.
And so
Well,
they had the Bush
I thought
Library.
It was in the teens,
Yeah.
between 10 and 20.
Right. So it's it's still
I
it's
was
a big
class
school.
52.
That's right, class of 52. Yes, sir. So it's changed a lot, but I know that you've given a lot of your time and you've been very charitable.
Well, I did it one time, and like I've said, I was a lot more well thought of than I really was.
Well, I know you had some really close relationships with
Yeah.
President Gates at some point, and
Well,
R.C.
and,
Slocum.
he became Secretary of Defense, I think.
That's right, for
And I tried
W.
to get him to come back and be president of A&M. He was president of A&M
I know
at
that.
one time. But he said, no, I'm just going to retire. Well, that's not true. He went to Williams and Mary, and he's chairman of the board of that. And I accused him of that, and he said, well, they don't do anything.
That's right. It's a good title,
it's
huh?
just a title.
I gotcha.
Nothing else.
Well,
And,
still, I'm sure.
but he was a good guy.
Mm-hmm.
It would have really been good if he had came back and been
that
president of
would have
A&M.
been nice. Yeah, that would have been nice. But yeah, I know that you've just given so much to that school. I'm very grateful that, yes, to your point, when you did retire, you were able to really enjoy being retired.
Well, I liked A&M very much,
Mm-hmm.
and I think I did a lot of good for A&M over the years. And but
yeah.
I don't even go there anymore. I don't even go to football.
I know
games
it's been a
anymore.
while since. Well, you got me to go there, so
Well, I got enough grandkids.
there you go. Exactly.
To go.
You got.
All right, and I think you're the only one that went.
I was
to
the only
A&M.
grandchild.
Every one of the grandkids went to a different university. Every single one of them.
That's right. Yep. My brother went to Texas.
Is sort of different.
Right. We have an Oklahoma Sooner and Vanderbilt.
Vanderbilt.
That's
right.
right. So I was the only grandson
I
that went.
Yes, three jobs it's Nashville, I think.
That's right, in Vanderbilt.
And that at the time, I thought that was the cleanest city in America. Mm-hmm. But I haven't been back anywhere anymore.
Yeah, that's all right. Well, I'm glad that I had the chance to, obviously, you were a big part of my life growing up, and A&M was a part of that too, just from you bringing me there.
You went to A&M.
I am too.
I wish more. Of course, I tried to get more people to go, but they had other ideas.
That's okay. Maybe they weren't the right fit, and they wouldn't have been a good Aggie anyway.
Well, and especially when I was there, you sort of had to be a different kind of person.
Sure.
To go to A&M, and now I think you've said it's one of the bigger ones.
That's right. Yeah, it's the largest by student population university in the country. So
is that?
That's right.
See, I didn't even know that, but I knew it was a lot of people. What did you say, in the 70s?
75,000 people. Yeah,
that's quite a few.
That's a huge student population.
I think I told you I had 4 big battles with them. One was not letting girls in, but I lost all 4 of them.
Oh, no. But you did, but I know that you did weren't you involved heavily in the Reveille gravesite and having the scoreboard?
If you want to call buying it and putting it up heavily, the administration wouldn't pay, and it was only $1,800 or so. And so I forget who, maybe it's Monty or somebody told me, but they said, if you want that sign up there for the dead dogs to look at, you do it. So I did.
Well, you heard it here first. I mean, the tradition.
It's not a big sign and not a big deal. All it is
a couple weeks
scores, A&M and whoever they're playing.
That's right, and the opponent.
And they're up to what, 9 or 10?
I think they're on Reveille 10 now.
Of Reveille.
It was 7 when I was there. So but yeah, the tradition goes.
A guy that worked for me, son was a sophomore, and I think it was Elf. I forget what company that Reveille stayed with.
Right.
That sophomore. It's always a sophomore.
Right.
And
he's the keeper.
Reveille here one time, and I had a paw print on a book called The Reveille, and no telling what it's worth.
Oh, I bet.
So I told my wife when she was alive, whatever you do, don't throw this book away because it's one of a kind.
It sounds like it. One of a kind.
And it's got his paw print on it.
Yeah, we got to find that book. Yeah, we'll have to check that out.
But we sure don't want to throw that book away. Somebody, I don't know who, will want it. And it's got to be worth in the it's a one of a kind.
There you go, one of a kind. Yeah, that's amazing. Well, thank you so much for taking the time to sit down with me and reminisce on your incredible life and all the contributions you've given to our great state and A&M.
I appreciated talking to you.
For sure. Thank you so much, Granddad. I appreciate it.
Okay.